Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Let me ask you something personal. Have you ever looked at a woman, your partner, your wife, your lover, and felt like there's a part of her world you just don't understand? She's strong, she's soft, she's unpredictable. Sometimes she pulls you close, and sometimes she disappears behind that invisible wall, the one you didn't even know existed. She tells you she's fine, but her eyes say something else. She wants connection, but then shuts you out. She says she's independent, but still seeks your reassurance. And in those moments you wonder, is this about her? Or is this about you? What if I told you every woman, no matter how beautiful, successful, or self-aware, carries invisible weaknesses, patterns, emotional blind spots, ones that shape her choices in love, in trust, in how she responds to you. But here's the truth. These are not flaws to be judged. They're openings, portals into deeper intimacy, if you can learn how to see them, not to fix her, not to control her, but to understand her. In this video, we're going to explore the subtle, often hidden, emotional vulnerabilities that live inside every woman, and how they show up in your relationship. And I promise you, once you see her differently, she'll start to feel safe with you in a way she never has before. Let's breathe into this moment together. You see, love is not a fairy tale, it's a dance. And for men, understanding a woman isn't about unlocking a cheat code. It's about listening to what's not being said. It's about noticing the pauses, the sighs, the way she reaches for you and then pulls back, not because she doesn't want love, but because sometimes it frightens her. Every woman carries within her a beautiful chaos, a history, a rhythm, a wound. And those wounds, they don't always bleed in obvious places. They show up in subtle behaviors, in patterns, in contradictions. That's what we're going to talk about here. The weaknesses of every woman. Not in a way that condemns her, but in a way that reveals her. Because a man who sees clearly is a man she will never forget. So let me take you somewhere vulnerable and real. Let's start with the first weakness. She doubts her worth more than she admits. Even the most confident, radiant woman you've ever met, the one who walks into a room and draws every eye, has questioned, am I enough? Not in passing, but deeply, repeatedly, silently. You may think, but she's beautiful, accomplished, smart. And yes, she may be, but you must understand, the female heart has been fed 1,000 messages from the world about what she should be. Not too loud, not too quiet. Be sexy, but don't ask for sex. Be soft, but not needy. Be independent, but not cold. She is constantly dancing between contradictions, and in that dance, she loses herself. So she builds armor. She curates her social media. She learns how to smile even when she's drowning. But that whisper of self-doubt, it's still there, especially when she loves someone, because love makes her vulnerable. And when she loves you, she starts wondering, if he sees all of me, will he still choose me? This is why sometimes she tests you, not to manipulate you, not to confuse you, but to check, is she safe to be her whole self around you? Can you hold her in her strength and her insecurity? If you respond with irritation or distance, her inner voice gets louder. See, I knew I wasn't enough. But if you respond with presence, with grounded calm, something inside her softens. Because now she knows you see through the surface and you're still here. Don't try to fix her doubt. Don't offer cliches. Just see it. Feel it. Be the stillness to her storm. Let's keep going. She overfunctions to feel loved. This is one that hides in plain sight. She gives and gives and gives. She remembers your appointments. She checks in when you're silent. She cooks. She comforts. She sends long messages to keep the emotional intimacy alive. At first you might think, whoa, she's nurturing. And she is. But beneath it, there's often something else. She's learned to earn love through service. Maybe it came from childhood. Maybe her mother only smiled when she was helpful. Maybe her father withdrew emotionally, and she thought if she just tried harder, she'd finally be enough to stay. Maybe her past partner only noticed her when she overextended. So now, giving has become her way of surviving. She believes, if I am needed, I won't be abandoned. So she anticipates your needs before you ask. She forgives too fast. She lets you off the hook when you should have been held accountable, not because she lacks standards, but because she fears if she stops giving, you might stop staying. And here's the irony. Sometimes, when she loves the most, she ends up feeling the least loved, because her care becomes expected, unnoticed, taken for granted. She gets tired but doesn't want to say it. She starts to feel resentful but hides it behind a smile. She wants to be chosen for who she is, not just what she does. But she doesn't know how to stop performing because slowing down feels risky, vulnerable, like she might become invisible. So, what do? You let her rest. You notice the small things she does, and you name them. You tell her, you don't have to hold it all together for me to love you. You offer without being asked. You match her energy with your own emotional responsibility. And maybe, just maybe, you help her see that love doesn't have to be earned through exhaustion, that she is enough, even when she's not over-delivering. Now, let's breathe here for a second, because if you're still with me, it means something in this is resonating. Maybe you've seen these patterns in your partner. Maybe you've watched a woman you care about carry too much, question too deeply, or love too quietly. And maybe, just maybe, you've been standing at the edge unsure how to reach her. But that's why we're here, because to love a woman deeply is to witness her weaknesses not as flaws, but as doorways into the very soul of her being, doorways into deeper connection, emotional safety, passion, devotion. And it doesn't start with changing her, it starts with understanding her. So stay with me, we're just getting started. And the next part we're going into is where the water runs deeper. There's something delicate about intimacy. It's not the candlelight or the soft music. Those are only signals. Intimacy is that split second when she shows you a piece of her soul she usually hides and waits to see what you'll do with it. Sometimes she hides her deepest feelings behind laughter. Other times she pretends she doesn't need you, just to see if you'll reach for her anyway. And this next weakness, right in that space between what she says and what she truly needs. She suppresses her anger until it turns cold. Let me explain. A woman doesn't always know how to express her anger. She's been taught, directly or indirectly, that if she raises her voice, she's too much. If she cries, she's dramatic. If she sets a boundary, she's difficult. So what does she do instead? She swallows it. She smiles through disrespect. She rationalizes being ignored. She softens her tone even when her heart is screaming, not because she wants to, but because she's afraid of being rejected, labeled, abandoned, afraid that if she's honest about her anger. But here's the thing. Anger never truly disappears. It only changes form. And when a woman cannot express her fire, it turns to ice. The warmth in her voice fades. The emotional closeness thins. You'll hear her say, "I'm fine," when she's anything but, and eventually she starts to disconnect. She may stay in the relationship. She may keep doing all the things she's always done, but emotionally, she's no longer there. And that absence hurts deeper than any argument ever could. So how do you help her here? You create space for her rage without running from it. You stop trying to defend yourself while she's still bleeding. You listen, not just to her words, but to her tone, her tension, the part of her voice that trembles when she's trying to stay composed. You don't fix it, you feel it. And if you're strong enough to hold her in that moment, to let her be messy, wild, angry without punishment, she will finally exhale, because now she knows she's allowed to be fully human with you. Let's move deeper. She fears emotional abandonment more than physical. This one is quiet, hidden, but devastating. You see, women are incredibly intuitive when it comes to presence. She knows the second your eyes glaze over. She feels when your body is in the room but your soul is somewhere else. You might think she's overreacting, but it's not drama, it's sensitivity. To a woman, emotional abandonment feels like disappearing in plain sight. You don't need to cheat to lose her trust. You just have to stop showing up emotionally, to stop being curious, to stop noticing her, to stop asking how her day really felt. And when that happens, when she's holding space for you, but you're not meeting her halfway, she begins to feel unseen. And when a woman feels unseen, something inside her begins to wilt. She starts to question, does he still care? She lowers her expectations. She starts doing things alone, not because she wants to, but because it hurts less than asking and being ignored. And slowly, she starts grieving the version of you that used to make her feel alive. This is why presence matters, not just physically, but emotionally. Turn off the screen, look at her. Ask questions that require more than one-word answers. Don't just hear her, feel her. And when you do, you'll see something incredible. She comes back to life. Because presence to a woman is not a luxury, it's oxygen. Are you still with me? Good. Because now we enter sacred territory. She confuses vulnerability with weakness. A woman wants to open up. She really does. But opening means exposure, and exposure means risk. So instead, she performs strength. She tells you, "I'm fine," even when she's crumbling. She hides her tears until the door closes. She pretends she doesn't care, just to protect her heart from disappointment. Why? Because somewhere along the way, she learned that being vulnerable made her a target. She opened up once and was mocked. She asked for love and was told she was needy. She said, "I miss you," and was left on read. So now she wears armor. And here's the part most men miss. Her silence isn't disinterest, it's defense. Her distance isn't indifference, it's self-preservation. She wants to share her fears, her dreams, her insecurities. She wants to let you see her. But she's watching closely how you respond to her smallest bids for connection. You want to know what brings a woman closer. It's not solving her problems, it's honoring her vulnerability. When she says, "I had a rough day," don't change the subject. When she says, "That really hurt," don't justify yourself. Just pause, stay, look her in the eyes and say, "Thank you for telling me." That moment is everything, because now you're not just her lover, you're her sanctuary. Let's not stop here. She chases emotional validation in unhealthy ways. When a woman doesn't feel emotionally secure, she doesn't always say it, but her behavior shifts. She may start needing more reassurance, or she may start picking fights, small ones, just to feel something. She might withdraw, hoping you'll come chase her, not because she wants drama, but because she wants to matter. Emotional validation is the quiet hunger behind so many of her actions. She wants to know she's still beautiful to you, still desired, still seen. But if she doesn't get that affirmation in healthy ways, she'll seek it in distorted ones, through jealousy, through comparison, through social media attention, not because she lacks character, but because she's starving. And what does she want really? To be chosen again, not once, not just in the beginning, but daily, in the small ways, in how you touch her without needing something in return, in how you remember the things she said in passing, in how you show up when she least expects it. That kind of presence fills the emotional cup she's been holding out, sometimes silently, for years. So instead of judging her need for validation, give her the thing she's afraid to ask for. Tell her she's enough. Tell her she's yours. And not just in words, but in attention. And now we're beginning to see her, not the curated version, not the filtered story, but the woman behind the performance. And once you see her, she'll start showing you more. There's a silence women carry that most men will never hear, not because she doesn't want to speak, but because she spent so long believing no one would truly listen. And the truth is, many women don't want to be saved. They want to be understood. This next weakness, it lives in the heart of that silence. She suppresses her needs to keep the peace. She'll tell you, it's okay. Don't worry about it. But it's not okay. It's never been okay. She's just been trained to believe that asking for more time, more affection, more clarity is somehow too much. So she silences herself. She plays it cool. She gives you space. Not because she doesn't want closeness, but because she doesn't want to push you away. So she chooses peace over truth, silence over conflict. But the price she pays is her own emotional suffocation. She starts to shrink, not immediately, but gradually. She stops telling you about the little things that bother her. She stops expressing her desires. She stops asking until one day, you'll notice she's no longer the woman who once lit up around you, and you'll wonder what changed. But it wasn't one moment. It was many, tiny, silent moments when she denied herself for your comfort, when she put your peace above her needs, when she chose harmony over honesty. And by the time she finally breaks, it will seem like it came out of nowhere. But it didn't. It came from everywhere. What she needs most is not for you to agree with everything she says, but to make her feel safe enough to say it, safe enough to speak, to disagree, to ask for what she really wants, and not be punished with distance or withdrawal. Because a woman who feels safe to express her needs is a woman who will open herself to you fully. Let's move into the most invisible of them all. She loses herself in love. It's almost poetic how women are taught to dissolve into romance. The movies, the fairy tales, the songs, they all glorify the idea that love is her ultimate destination. So she pours herself into it. She adapts, she accommodates, she becomes what she thinks you need. At first it feels like devotion, but soon it becomes disappearance. She starts saying, "We're more than I." Her dreams get pushed aside. Her routines change. She stops doing the things that made her feel whole before you. Not because you asked her to, but because she believes love means losing herself in someone else. And in that self-abandonment, something painful happens. She becomes resentful, not always out loud, but internally. Because the deeper she goes into you, the more she wonders, will you go just as deep into her? Will you ask her about the things she gave up for this relationship? Will you remind her of who she was before the work began? Will you encourage her to return to herself? Not because you want distance, but because you want wholeness. You see, a powerful man doesn't just love a woman. He makes sure she never forgets herself in the process. And finally, we arrive at this truth. She fears not being enough for the right man and too much for the wrong one. This is the paradox that lives in every woman's heart. She wants to be everything. The muse, the mystery, the safe place, the wildfire. But she also fears, what if my fullness scares him away? So she tones herself down. She minimizes her ambitions. She doesn't speak too loudly about her passions. She becomes palatable, hoping she'll be loved. But that kind of love always feels fragile. She's constantly measuring herself, watching your reactions, asking silently, was I too emotional, too opinionated, too soft, too sexual, too serious? She doesn't want to lose you by being too much, but she also fears being invisible if she's not enough. This tug of war is exhausting. What she craves more than anything is a man who can hold all of her, who doesn't flinch when she's intense, who doesn't disappear when she's vulnerable, who sees her contradictions not as flaws, but as facets of her richness. And when she finds that man, she will give him a kind of love most people only dream of. Because the woman who feels safe in her fullness will love with a fearlessness that cannot be matched. Now, let's come back to you for a moment. If you've made it this far, I want you to understand something very clearly. This video is not about identifying a woman's flaws. You can control her. It's about understanding her deeply. Not the surface version she shows the world, but the layered, complex, radiant soul underneath. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be present. She doesn't need a hero. She needs a witness. Someone who sees her without trying to fix her. Someone who loves her not in spite of her wounds, but because of the way she survived them. And when you do that, you don't just become the man she loves. You become the man she trusts with her whole being. That is rare. And if you've ever wondered why she pulled away, why she changed, why the connection faded, it's likely because one of these weaknesses was triggered and she didn't feel safe enough to bring it to the surface. Now you know better. Now you see. And once you see her, you can choose, do I love her from a distance or do I love her up close? Have you ever held a woman in your arms and still felt miles away? She's right there physically, her breath on your neck, her body curled into yours, but her soul, her presence, it's somewhere else. And you can feel it, the gap, the unspoken, the invisible walls she built not out of malice but out of memory, out of protection, because the truth is, many women have been taught to give their bodies before their hearts, not because they're careless, but because giving her heart has hurt more than anything else. So here we are, at another tender truth. She uses emotional withdrawal as self-defense. A woman can be warm like summer, but when she feels unsafe, she becomes winter. It's not revenge, it's reflex. She may not yell, she may not cry. She just shuts down. That sparkle in her eyes dims. Her touch changes. Her laughter becomes quieter. She goes somewhere inside herself where you can't follow. And if you don't understand this pattern, you'll think she's overreacting. You'll accuse her of being cold, passive-aggressive, or manipulative. But in reality, she's just protecting the parts of her that have been hurt too many times. She's thinking, if I show too much, he'll use it against me. If I speak up, I'll be dismissed again. If I lean in, he'll pull away. So she leans out first. She keeps herself busy. She smiles in public and cries in private. She convinces herself she's okay without you, even though she's aching to be held, but not just touched. Held emotionally, fully. What she needs is not grand gestures. She needs attunement. The man who brings her back isn't loud. He's still. He notices the shift in her energy. He doesn't pry, but he makes it safe for her to return. He says, I'm here when you're ready. And then he stays. That kind of love disarms her fear, slowly, gently, permanently. But this next one, it's the reason some women never open up at all. She's terrified of being compared. You may think she doesn't notice, but she does. Every time you mention your ex's name, her ears perk up. When you praise another woman's body, voice, ambition, she logs it. Not because she's insecure, but because comparison has always been a battlefield for her. From a young age, she's been ranked, judged, measured, too fat, too thin, too dark, too loud, too quiet. So when she loves a man, the fear that he's still mentally elsewhere, still connected to the memory of another woman, can drive her to internal chaos. You may not even mean it. You may just be reminiscing. But to her, it sounds like a silent competition, and she feels like she's losing. And yet she'll pretend it's fine. She'll brush it off, even joke about it. But inside, she's asking herself, am I enough for him? Will he always wonder if someone else could have made him happier? And the worst part, she might never say any of this aloud. She'll just become a little more distant, a little less trusting, a little more performative. So what can you do? Be intentional. You don't need to erase your past, but don't glorify it either. Don't romanticize the women who came before her, especially in front of the woman who's choosing you now. Don't make her feel like she has to compete with ghosts. Celebrate her uniquely, relentlessly, authentically, and when she sees that she's irreplaceable, not compared, she'll give you a version of herself no one else ever received. Now, let's pause here. Because if you're listening, really listening, you're not just hearing about women, you're hearing about the woman in your life. The one you've been trying to reach. Or maybe the one you've already lost and now understand for the first time. That's the power of awareness. You begin to see her not as a puzzle to be solved, but as a human to be experienced. You stop trying to manage her moods and start getting curious about what they're protecting. You stop reacting and start responding. And in that space, something new is born. A woman's weaknesses are not designed to frustrate you. They are invitations to grow, to expand, to love beyond what you've known. But only if you have the courage to go there. And in this place, this emotional territory that most men avoid, you don't lose your power, you gain it. Because now you're not just loving her body, you're loving her soul. When a woman loves, she gives the kind of love that could heal nations. She remembers the details. She mirrors your joy. She listens with her whole body. She'll hold your hand when you're strong. And when you fall apart, she doesn't just see who you are. She sees who you could become. But when her weaknesses are misunderstood, when her silence is misread, her vulnerability met with withdrawal, her giving mistaken for endless capacity, something sacred inside her begins to fade. Not because she stops loving, but because she no longer feels safe to love. And this final weakness is the most misunderstood of them all. She holds on longer than she should because letting go feels like failure, even when the relationship is breaking her, even when she's giving more than she has, even when she knows deep down that her needs are no longer being met. She stays, not out of weakness, not out of desperation, but out of loyalty to what could have been. She holds on to potential, on to memories, on to promises that once felt so real, so sacred. She can't bear the thought of abandoning them. She tells herself, maybe if I'm more patient, maybe if I love harder, maybe if I just hold on a little longer. But every time she does, she sacrifices another piece of herself, until one day she wakes up numb. She no longer cries, she no longer fights, she no longer hopes. And that is when the relationship is truly over. Not when she's yelling, but when she's silent. Because a woman doesn't leave when she's tired of loving. She leaves when she's tired of losing herself. And if you've ever watched a woman walk away looking peaceful, not angry, not bitter, it means she left 1,000 times before that day ever came. She just finally stopped returning to the place that kept breaking her. So what does all of this mean? It means she is not a mystery to be decoded. She is not an emotional burden to manage. She is not a project to fix. She is a garden. She needs nourishment, not noise. She needs presence, not performance. She needs consistency, not convenience. And the man who gives her these things, not perfectly, but earnestly, will receive a love that touches him on a level he never knew existed. Because when a woman feels safe, she becomes unstoppable in her love, in her energy, in her intimacy. She will pour into you in ways no other human can. Not because she has to, but because she wants to. So here's what I ask of you. Be that man. The one who leans in when it gets hard. The one who listens when she withdraws. The one who doesn't just admire her strength, but honors her softness. The one who sees every weakness she hides and stays anyway. Because that is real masculinity. That is emotional leadership. That is intimacy. Not just in the bedroom, but in the cruel or messy human spaces where love either deepens or disappears. And if you're watching this and thinking of someone you love or someone you lost, you still have a choice. You can choose to be the man who learns, the man who reflects, the man who loves not just with his hands, but with his heart. And if you do, you won't just change your relationship. You'll change her. You'll give her the kind of love that rewires her story, that makes her believe again, that softens the armor she built for survival. And in return, she will give you a loyalty, a passion, and a partnership that no fleeting thrill could ever compare to. So if you're still here, thank you for listening, for staying present, for choosing growth. Now, I want to hear from you. In the comments below, share what resonated most. Which of these patterns have you seen in your relationships? Which one opened your eyes? And if this video moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Maybe a friend who's struggling to understand the woman he loves. Maybe a woman who needs to feel seen. Maybe someone who's forgotten what real connection looks like. And please, don't forget to like the video, subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another deep dive into the truths that matter most. Because here we're not just learning how to love, we're learning how to see each other, and that is where the real intimacy begins. Here's to love that's fearless, and to men who are brave enough to give it.